we have the most famous game I've done in a long time, Pokemon Blue version, Pokemon Red version and Pokemon Yellow version. For those new to the channel, as I feel this may be the first video of mine people may choose to watch, I 100% games and go into tedious detail on the act of 100%ing them while giving my thoughts and feelings on the way, after which I rank them against all the other games I've 100%ed so far. Yep, I'm doing all 3 of these myself. That's filling out the Pokédex in all 3 versions, defeating every single trainer in all 3 versions, and collecting every single item in all 3 versions. Most would make this a collaborative effort, getting friends to play the other versions, like how the Completionist does his Pokemon videos. But here's the thing. 1. I don't know many people and I'm very bad at staying in contact. 2. I'm not sharing my accomplishment. If I just did one version, I only completed that one version and not the other 2. I have to do all 3 for it to count all 3. But of course, when it comes to multiple versions, there's 2 questions I'm sure people will ask. First is, what about Green version? Well, since Japanese Green and Red are just glitchier versions of our Red and Blue with uglier Pokemon sprites, I didn't see any worth in playing through it too. The second question is, what about Japanese Blue? It has its own unique Pokemon list and layout of the bonus dungeon. And while that is true, the thing is, I'm playing and 100%ing 3 versions of an RPG at once. A 4th version is just too much. Like, I was doing all 3 games simultaneously. I'd do one section in blue, then repeat that section in red, and then once more in yellow. That includes just about all the grinding for evolutions and such. I mentally could not be juggling another. So as for my history with the franchise, this might be a long one, so the chapters are in the description if you're not interested. I saw the red and blue versions in a catalogue when they were coming out here in the UK in 1999, didn't get why there were 2 versions of the same game, and moved on. I happened to catch the first episode of the anime on TV sometime later and slowly gained interest catching other random episodes out of order. I got to try out Red at a classmate's birthday party once and had no idea what was going on. Everyone around me at the time kind of got into the series before I did, and quicker. So I just remember one dinner break at school where, out of nowhere, literally everyone was trading the top stickers and I was just about the only person who had none, not knowing they even existed, and felt so left out. Getting into the stickers was an even bigger gateway to the franchise, and of course eventually people quickly moved away from the stickers, right after I amassed an impressive collection and filled in most of the sticker book mind you, and onto the trading card game, so I was behind again. It took me longer to get into the cards for a simple reason. You try convincing working class parents and grandparents in the 1990s of a good reason to upgrade from packs of pieces of paper that cost just 30p to packs of pieces of paper costing about £1 or more. I had to compromise and settle for the Topps cards because they were cheaper. You know, the ones that were just anime clip art or episode screenshots on the front and a blurb on the back. I was still left out because I think only 2 other people I knew back then collected those, but eventually I convinced them and I could join in. I put so much emphasis on the cards because, for the longest time, the cards and anime were most kids' main consumption of Pokemon in my area back then. When I finally got a Game Boy Color and Pokemon Blue for my 8th birthday in 2000, I was one of only about 5, maybe 6 kids in my class who had actually owned the games. Most kids my age in my area didn't have Game Boys. Many didn't have game consoles. At most they'd have a PlayStation 1 because their parents wanted one and everyone knew a guy who could get them pirated games for incredibly cheap. So for the majority of kids I knew back then, they got super into the Pokemon craze without owning the games. But by the time I finally got Blue for that birthday, I was super into the craze myself, but I was atrocious at this game and my first playthrough never got past the rival battle at the SSN because I only focused on my starter and ignored everything else and constantly ran from battles because I couldn't be arsed. It wasn't until the following Christmas when my brother got Red and Yellow and we got the Prima Strategy guide that I got a bit better, but I was still pretty bad. Struggled all the way to the Elite Four in Yellow until I lent the game to another kid for the night and his brother snuck on, started a new save and saved over all my progress. Then my successful playthrough was back on Blue, which I accomplished through brute force and level grinding. I was only 8, so I had no time for strategy. I'll speed through the rest of it past Generation 1. The franchise stayed popular with us through Gold and Silver, but through Gen 2 was when I finally dropped off the cards and watched less of the anime, with the Celebi and Suicune film being the last of those I've watched. When it came to Ruby and Sapphire, I was the only one in primary school I knew of who had either of them. The craze was waning a bit and still being into the games got me ridicule, but I was always unpopular throughout my entire school life, so I just kept on. People only kept me around during the Pokemon craze because they knew I'd let them have a go on the game, or they knew they could con me with badly one-sided card trades. But Generation 3 was the last time I would interact with the main series when it was new. I fell off the anime about a year into Hoenn, and when it came to Generations 4 and 5, I still played them, but it took me 2 years to get around to each of them after their releases. But Pokemon White was the last of the main series I have played. It has nothing to do with the game's quality, but another issue I've had with the series since the beginning that finally got me to just stop by the time Generation 6 was announced. That reason will become relevant later in this video, so I will be going over it at some point. It's one that I feel will make sense for anyone who's watched even a small chunk of my videos. Since then, all I've played are the odd spin-offs that either catch my interest or I bought because I collect Wii U games. Rumble U, Vanilla Pokken, a tiny bit of Shuffle at one point, Detective Pikachu and New Pokemon Snap, but not a single main series game since White. So with all that backstory out of the way, now for the game. You've probably noticed I'm playing this through Pokemon Stadium on the N64 using a transfer pack. This is because if I'm playing through this entire game 3 times, I'm absolutely making use of the Dodrio Tower's triple speed function for my grinding sessions. The way this will go is that Blue will be the main playthrough I'll focus on. After each section I'll swap over to Red and then Yellow to show just the important bits of completion and any changes. This will be split into 4 videos, each covering about 40 Pokemon each, ending at whatever point I find neatest. I start the new game and get the traditional Professor talks to me in my dreams and tells me about the world I currently live in part. I don't have to explain this, do I? So he asks my name and in all 3 versions, I'm Red. I'm a stickler for using canon names. And of course his grandson, our lifelong rival, is named Blue in all versions. You know this bit where the big sprite of Red shrinks into the player sprite? As a kid, I honestly thought Professor Oak was somehow shrinking me into the world of Pokemon. So I start in my bedroom where I can mess with the Super Nintendo, withdraw a potion from my PC and go downstairs. My mum expects me to be out of the house even though I'm like 11 because the TV said so. She also said Professor Oak is looking for me. So I go outside and Pallet Town is very barren. It has 2 houses and a lab, which isn't enough to fit all the people living there. Next door, Blue's sister says he's at Oak's lab, and inside the lab he tells me Oak isn't in. I read his emails, which contains the franchise's first in-game mention of the Pokemon League. It's a bit weird that a personal email has the actual message be a PS, unless this was a public ad sent out containing a PS to Professor Oak, which would be even weirder. And so it's time to trigger Oak's appearance by walking into uncut grass. He sees this as a sign I need to finally have a Pokemon of my own. So he takes me back into his lab where Blue is tired of waiting. It seems Oak forgot he called his own grandson over in favour of focusing on me instead. And it makes sense. Look at him. Now look at me. Have you heard Blue's theme music? No one can have a theme like that and not be a dickhead. But yeah, he's called us over to give us a Pokemon each. He used to be a serious trainer and had loads, but seems to have misplaced them in his old age and only has 3. And I get the first choice because I'm the favourite grandson despite not being related. And with this being Pokemon Blue, I choose Squirtle. The Squirtle line is my favourite of the starters, of all the starters in the series really. Charmander is for boring normies and Bulbasaur is for contrarian hipsters, Squirtle is for cool people, and me. But jokes aside, I just always clicked with Squirtle and its line. Not only does it perfectly ride that line of cute and cool to a child, it's very good for the early game, late game, it's just good all around. It was my starter Squirtle that carried me to my first completion of a Pokemon game 22.5 years ago. There's a reason it was chosen to be the first level starter as part of Pokemon Trainer in Brawl. Remember when the anime reached Johto and went on a mass writing out spree of many series regulars? Charizard was a shock and felt weird at the time. Writing out Squirtle just felt wrong. Blue's a counter-picking arsehole and goes for Bulbasaur. I go to leave, but Blue really wants to prove how good he is by beating my Pokemon, and so my first battle starts. All we have is a level 5 starter with Tackle and either Tail Whip or Growl. There's no massive loss for losing this battle, but I haven't lost it in over 20 years. I don't intend to start again on camera. Winning gets my Squirtle to level 6 and Blue whines about picking the wrong Pokemon. He states his intent to make it stronger and leaves. From here, we're not actually told to do anything. Talking to Oak again is optional and he just tells me to raise the Pokemon through battle. But there'd be no game if I just hang around Pallet Town for the rest of my life, and so I go north into Route 1, which connects Pallet Town to Viridian City. But first, let's move on to Red. I take the potion from the PC, trigger Oak's appearance, and when given my choice of Pokemon, I choose Charmander. So despite my joke earlier, I do like Charmander quite a bit. I like all 3 Kanto starters. Charmander was the very first starter I ever chose as a kid, as I'd seen Ash's Charizard in the anime and a classmate had spent months always bigging up his own level 100 Charizard, so I thought choosing Charmander would result in guaranteed success. Anyone who knows the slightest about Gen 1 knows how that goes, and the majority of people who played it as kids back then also fell into that same trap. Blue's still a counter-picking arsehole and goes with Squirtle in this timeline. The battle goes even better for me as his Squirtle tackles once and then does nothing but tail whip for the rest of the fight while I scratch it out and get Charmander to level 6. I then head into Route 1. Now let's go back a third time and see how that went in Yellow. I grab the potion, but this time when Oak stops me, he also enters the tall grass and triggers a battle with a Pikachu. He catches it and takes me back to his lab where there's only one Pokemon to give away. Blue is an actual twat and pushes me aside to take it for himself. Oak was actually planning to give Blue his own later, but decides to instead enable his grandson's shitty behaviour by letting him keep this one. Instead, Oak pawns off the Pikachu he just caught onto me. Yeah, I like Pikachu well enough. It's cute and pretty much perfect for the mascot role. Maybe it's because I don't really interact with the franchise anymore, but I never really felt any overexposure myself. I mean, yeah, being the main mascot, it's gonna get more play than a lot of others. I don't know, I've just sometimes seen the odd fan, even older than me, getting really worked up and angry over Pikachus, and I'm just left thinking, what are you doing? Come on. But then again, I still get angry over a certain roided out, green-haired tosspot from a 30-year-old Japanese animated children's film, so I can't really say anything. I will say I do prefer the older design where it was fatter and had no defined neck yet. When Blue challenges me to battle, we learn that in this version his starter is always an Eevee. I know this made many people I knew back then wish for another version of this game where you start with that Eevee yourself like Oak intended. That's what happens when you tease with the possibility and have it taken away. This fight is even easier here since Pikachu starts with Thundershock, which is just better than Tackle and Scratch for this battle. Pikachu reaches level 6 and learns Tail Whip alongside the growl it also started with. Once Blue leaves, we get one of the bigger changes Yellow made. Like Ash's Pikachu in the anime, this Pikachu does not like being inside a Pokeball, and so it breaks out. From here, it'll follow behind me wherever I walk and I can talk to it to see how it feels. Right now, it doesn't like me. And so like the others, I set off into Route 1. It's a short journey north with a bit of moving left and right. I talk to the first guy I pass here who is a Pokemart employee and gives me a potion as a free sample to encourage shopping at them. Well, considering their chain is the only shop in the entire country, I have no choice regardless. I've been skipping talking about random battles since I can't catch anything yet, but Squirtle does reach level 7 going through here. The rest of the journey north is uneventful with no more battles and I reach the Viridian City. I can go into the Pokemon Center to heal and I'm still early in the game where citizens of this place have nothing to do in their lives but give me gameplay tips. I go into the Pokemart and have the shopkeeper have me do their job for them and ask me to deliver a parcel back to Oak. First time playing as a kid, I actually thought this was a side quest and tried to ignore it. I just wanted to move on and catch some Pokemon. But I can't move on as this old man is laid out on the ground and won't let me pass until he has his coffee. Yes, I know he was drunk in Japanese, everyone knows. In a house next to him has a guy talking about nicknames. You might have noticed by now, but I don't nickname Pokemon. I just don't do it. I'm not creative with names, which you might have figured out looking at a guy who made his online handle Ultra Kintaro. Going west out of town and through this thin path north, I follow it to this tall plant and inspect it to find another potion. I then have an uneventful trip back to Pallet Town to hand Oak his parcel. Just that bit of flavour text about his parcel being a custom Pokeball got anyone near me who also had the games wondering what exactly it was and if we could get hold of it ourselves. Blue shows up saying Oak has called him over. Oak is giving both of us the first Pokedexes he's made. Since he could never make a complete encyclopedia of all Pokemon in his youth, our youths have to be spent on it instead. Never mind that due to the need for more games meaning more Pokemon, his life's goal will never be accomplished. Especially never mind the other, much bigger reason finishing a Pokedex is so unlikely, but we're not at that point, I don't want to go off yet. Blue says he can do this himself and that he doesn't need me. He says he'll borrow a map from his sister and tell her not to give me one before he leaves. But unlike Blue, his sister is not a massive arsehole and she gives me the town map. So now it's time to go through Route 1 a third time back to Viridian City. The old man blocking the way forward has had his coffee and offers to show me how to catch a Pokemon. He shows off his luck at being able to catch a level 5 Pokemon at full health with 100% accuracy. I next head west from Viridian City into Route 22. There's an item that can only be obtained for a very limited time and requires a bit of grinding. It doesn't take long before Squirtle reaches level 8 and learns Bubble. So yeah, as I said before, I'm using Pokemon Stadium's Dodrio Tower to speed this up. Some may consider it a cheat, but as far as I'm concerned, this is a function included in the game by the developers. Everything I'm doing is stuff possible within the confines of the original cars. But it is the fact I'm doing all 3 versions myself that made me decide on doing things this way. If I'm playing the same RPG 3 times, cutting the time spent working on this to a third of what it normally would do is something I am absolutely taking. After a few minutes of sped up grinding, Squirtle reaches level 9, and then level 10 not long later. 4 minutes at triple speed get it to level 11. Heading north through the grass and continuing west has me running to Blue again. He tells me the Pokemon League is this way and not to bother as I'm not good enough and don't have any badges anyway before he starts a battle. What's normally not a bad battle is quite difficult as I need to win it with just my starter for an item. First he just has a new level 9 Pidgey that I bubble away easily. Then comes his Bulbasaur, now level 8. What follows is a long string of tackles while I get Leech Seeded, healing it for most damage dealt every turn. This plus the sand attacks I got from the Pidgey make me miss a lot and I reset the game. Then my controller fails to register the transfer pack. This is because I was playing using a Retrobit Tribute 64 controller, and they aren't supposed to be compatible with the transfer pack. I just get it to work sometimes by brute force and several resets, but this would then mean it would find any excuse to lose connection. I eventually did dig out an old controller and then buy myself another official N64 controller, as all my childhood ones are long dead, so I could have 2 transfer packs safely plugged in at once. But I still had to deal with this a couple more days waiting for it to arrive. So that's a second transfer pack and a second official N64 controller I bought just to make these videos the way I wanted them. When I finally get it working, I lose again, and the transfer pack loses connection again. But on my 3rd try at this battle, I get really lucky and just manage to tackle it out with little issue. It even gets Squirtle to level 12. Normally, Blue's claims of me just being lucky are just copium, but in this one case, in this one playthrough, he was right. Blue states his interest in taking on the Pokemon League and tells me to get a move on myself. Continuing west I can enter the building, but since I don't have a single gym badge I'm not allowed very far in. So what was the point of making an easy battle so hard for myself when I can catch Pokemon by now? Well, winning the rematch with Blue while owning 0 Pokeballs and having caught no new Pokemon allows me to go back to Professor Oak and have him tell me I need to actually catch Pokemon to fill the dex, and so he gives me 5 Pokeballs for free. Until this playthrough, I never knew about this, because who would ever discover this by accident? Pokeballs become available to purchase before the point I'd normally be taking on that rematch. And at this point, I've travelled Route 1 so much I'm usually just wanting to get going by now. But I have to collect every obtainable item, so I had to get these as well. Then it's back to Viridian City to buy another 10 Pokeballs. You need to deliver the parcel to Oak to buy them as the shopkeeper won't let you buy anything until it's delivered. So running back to Route 22, I do a bit of catching. For a lot of them, I'm gonna have to try them at full health as my Squirtle is probably strong enough to one-shot most of them. First is a level 3 Rattata. The start of the trend of the early game rodent Pokemon. It's okay, mainly just being memorable for showing up so early. It's not my favourite of the 5 early game rodents I'm familiar with, but it's definitely not my least favourite. Next battle gets me a level 5 Spearow. The Spearow line was one of those I never really paid attention to. As a kid they were neither cool enough or cute enough. These videos will be the first time I put some serious effort into a Spearow and its evolution, and I at least gained a new appreciation for them from a gameplay perspective. Then I catch a level 3 female Nidoran. Here's something, despite the criticisms people have towards the pre-yellow sprites, I actually think the international red and blue sprite for the female Nidoran is my favourite look for it. It's much cuter here, whereas I think it looks kind of generic everywhere else. Back on Route 1, I catch myself a level 3 Pidgey. I've used a lot of the Pidgey line despite knowing they're not that good. I don't know, I just always liked the look of this line and where it heads. I'm sure the anime played a role in that. Pidgey is the one I care about the least though, but it's still fine. Finally, back on Route 22, I catch the rare, for Blue anyway, male Nidoran. I've always preferred the male Nidoran to the female one. I think it's a lot cuter for one thing, and I even like it over both of the line's second stages. At the time, differently gendered Pokemon with split evolution lines getting their own separate Pokédex entries made sense, but the addition of genders for all Pokemon in Generation 2 and then Generation 4 including more gender differences did bring that choice into question. I don't know if there are still people today who want them to combine the Nidorans into one spot on the dex and share a number, but my thought on it has always been to just leave it. It is what it is, and changing it now, knocking every Pokemon on the dex's number after Nidoqueen down by 1 this far in is just going to cause needless confusion. But that's that whole section done for now in Blue, so let's check in and skim over what happened with the others. With red I get the free potion on Route 1, get Oak's parcel in Viridian City, get the potion in the tree, and trade the parcel for the Pokédex. I get the town map and start grinding Charmander. At level 9 it learns Ember. 3 minutes later it's up to level 11 and I take on Blue. His Pidgey goes down easy, and despite his level 8 Squirtle knowing Bubble, it only uses it once, letting me scratch it to death. Charmander reaches level 12 on the way back to Oak to get those free 5 Pokeballs. I catch a level 3 Pidgey, level 3 Rattata, level 4 male Nidoran, level 3 Spearow, and a level 3 female Nidoran, which is the rare one in this version. And now for Yellow. I get the free potion on Route 1, Oak's parcel, and the potion in the tree in Viridian City. I trade the parcel for the Pokédex. Now for the time to grind Pikachu. I suppose now is the best time to point out the new Pokemon sprites in Yellow that were redrawn to more closely match the anime. Yeah, they did that. For the most part they're better, but as mentioned with the female Nidoran, there are some red and blue ones I still like more. At level 8 Pikachu learns Thunder Wave. Another change is that the old man in this timeline is less lucky, as his attempt at trying to catch level 5 Rattata at full health ends with him wasting his last Pokeball, and he has to go off and buy more before we can see him do it properly. At level 11 I have Pikachu forget Growl to learn Quick Attack. At this level I try the Blue rematch. I may as well also point out that Blue was also redrawn to look closer to Gary from the anime. In Yellow he has a level 9 Spearow instead of a Pidgey, but it can't take my Pikachu's Thunder Shock regardless. Next is the Eevee at level 8. I paralyse it with Thunder Wave and then keep shocking it until it goes down. I get the Pokeballs from Oak and get catching. Level 4 Pidgey, level 4 Rattata. Route 22 gets a new Pokemon in Yellow as Mankey shows up earlier than it does in Red. Mankey's cute I suppose, but it's just one of those cases where its evolution made a much bigger impression on me. Thanks to the anime obviously. Like Spearow, these videos will be the first time I put serious effort into a Mankey. Following that, a level 4 female Nidoran, a second level 3 Mankey for trading to Blue which doesn't have any, a level 2 male Nidoran and a level 4 Spearow. Next comes the trading. This is why I had to buy a second transfer pack on top of my original one that came with my copy of Stadium, so I could record the trade on both ends. This one is very simple. I just trade the Squirtle from Blue with the Charmander from Red and then back to their original games, just to log them on each game's dexes. Back to Blue, and before I move on, I'm just going to level up my new catchers a bit. Rattata to level 4, I also catch a second Spearow for a future trade. My first Spearow to level 6, Rattata to level 5 and then level 6, male Nidoran to level 4 and then level 5 and soon after level 6, Pidgey to level 4, then to level 5 learning Sand Attack, and then to level 6 and soon after level 7, Spearow to level 7. Female Nidoran is still stuck at level 3, she just can't survive even one of most of these encounters. Male Nidoran gets to level 7. Next is Rattata to level 7, learning Quick Attack. I get the female Nidoran to level 4, but it had to be in Route 1 just for it to survive. Then it quickly gets to level 5, then level 6 and then level 7. That's everyone but my starter at level 7, so it's time to move on. I leave town to the north, but first I can check out the city's gym. Abandoned for a long time and with a force field in front of the door that forces me to take a step south from it. Then it's north into Route 2. Quickly covering the other two. In Red I catch a second male Nidoran for a future in-game trade and also catch a second Spearow and get my new catchers to level 7 with Pidgey being the last one this time. It takes a bit longer with Yellow as I have one more Pokemon to level up with that Mankey. I do it all again and Mankey actually turns out to be the last one to reach level 7 as well. But back to Blue. I don't have access to most of the route right now, just going north through a bit of grass into another building. Out the other end of the building is Viridian Forest, the first dungeon. The first guy inside lets me know that this is the first place in the game I'll have other trainers to battle. So, not having been seen since I covered Dragon Quest II, the doodled over maps will show my route on collecting everything here. Numbers will mark items and letters will mark trainers. First there is an item hidden in the bottom left tile of this tree right after entering. I then go west and then north to find the second item. Back to the tree and I go east until I can go all the way north, battling trainers A and B on the way. Where the northern path ends is my third item. Then it's west, going south, north and south again, taking a quick detour further south for the fourth item. Then to the west edge and north again where there's a trainer marked C, but first inspecting the tile directly left of him gets me one more item. Then it's north all the way, heading back out to Route 2. The hidden item in the tree is an antidote, the second item is a Pokeball. Next event is taking on Trainer A. He's a bug catcher with 2 Pokemon and starts with a level 6 Weedle. I remember my first time doing this battle as a kid. I didn't learn I could buy Pokeballs yet, so that one I just found in the grass was my first one, and I wasted it trying to steal one of this guy's Pokemon. Taking out the Weedle gets my female Nidoran to level 8, teaching it Scratch. He next has a level 6 Caterpie that my Spearow easily takes down. Next is Trainer B, another bug catcher. This one has 3 Pokemon. First level 7 Weedle. Taking it down gets my male Nidoran to level 8 and teaches it Horn Attack. Next is a level 7 Kakuna that gets my Spearow to level 8. Finally, he has another level 7 Weedle that my Rattata takes down. The money you win from these early fights is awful, less than half of the money it takes to buy a single Pokeball. The third item is another antidote, fourth is a potion. The hidden item in front of the last trainer is a potion as well. While you can skip the other 2 trainers, this last bug catcher is unskippable. He just has the one level 9 Weedle. My Rattata quick attacks it to death and gets to level 8. Well, that's all the items and trainers dealt with, now for the Pokemon. I somehow only wound up getting wild Metapods until now and didn't want to waste time training a Pokemon with just Harden, so I haven't caught anything new yet. In the next random encounter I catch a level 5 Caterpie. I'm very happy with that level, as even cutting just 2 levels I'd need to gain will make this more bearable. Caterpie was the first wild Pokemon I ever caught as a kid, and back then I made it all the way to Cerulean City with just it and my starter. I said I was bad. You try taking Misty on with just a level 17 Charmeleon and a level 9 Metapod. But yeah, I like Caterpie well enough. It's cute and it's probably my favourite of the first stage early game worms that becomes a Cocoon Pokemon from the first 5 generations. After many repeat Caterpies and Cocoons I don't want to catch, I end up with the rare wild Pikachu with just a 5% chance of appearing. I catch it, but since it doesn't evolve through level and I'm already using one in yellow, this is gonna be neglected. There's just one more catch I need to get here, but it also has a 5% chance and takes ages to appear when I put the triple speed on. I even get several Pikachus before it shows up, and that's never happened to me before. But eventually I get that 5% Weedle to show up. I catch it at level 3. I'm fine with Weedle, but it probably wouldn't end up in like a top 200 or 300 or anything. It's yet another one I don't have much to say about other than it's cute. I mainly remember it for that frustrating moment in episode 4 of the anime where Ash fails to catch one because of that dickhead samurai. And not long after I catch a second for trading with Yellow. That's all the catching I do here, but now I want to grind all my evolvable Pokemon to level 10. High level Metapods are my favourite grinding victim in this place. First my Rattata reaches level 9, and after a few more battles level 10. Pidgey reaches level 8, then level 9 very soon after, and level 10 a couple minutes later. Next is Spearow at level 9, learning Leer, and then level 10 a couple minutes later. Spearow was really easy to grind here as Peck destroys these bugs. Next comes the female Nidoran to level 9 and then level 10 shortly after, then the male Nidoran to level 9 and then level 10 just as quick. There's my entire current party, so I finally leave Viridian City to the north, but I'll be back with my bugs. This puts me in another building leading to the northern end of Route 2. North a bit more takes me to Pewter City, but I'm not exploring yet. I go straight to the Pokemon Center. In here we can meet an NPC Jigglypuff singing the guy next to it to sleep, and the guy who drops the first mention of Team Rocket in the game, saying they're causing trouble at Mount Moon. Since I can only carry 6 Pokemon and I have 10 with my neglected Pikachu and Double Weedle, I go to the PC, drop off male Nidoran and Spearow, and pick up Caterpie and Weedle. I go back into Viridian Forest and start with Weedle since it's so low leveled, but its Poison Sting being super effective on the bugs at least makes up for it. I get it to level 4, then level 5 in no time. Level 6 only takes longer due to getting less Metapods, and then level 7 doesn't take long either. This gets my first evolution in the playthrough as Weedle evolves into Kakuna. Yeah, this was back in the day where Kakuna was implied to have little stingers below its head for a short while. While I prefer Caterpie over Weedle, I've always liked Kakuna more than Metapod. I've always just liked the look of it for some reason. Probably my favourite of the early game Cocoons overall. The one thing I have always struggled to get used to though is evolving Weedles and Caterpies not learning Harden when they become Kakunas and Metapods in red and blue. That was a yellow edition, and it's one of those things that just makes so much sense that it not happening here always throws me off. I give Kakuna a break and get working on Caterpie. Caterpie is tougher to level up here, having Tackle instead of a super effective Poison Sting. That's why I'm glad to have caught one at level 5. It takes a couple minutes to get it to level 6, but thanks to Metapods, only 3 more fights get it to level 7, evolving it into Metapod. While I prefer Kakuna, I still like Metapod. I think the part I like most is how its emotional state looks completely different depending on which angle you look at its eyes. Personally, because of this sprite, it always looked tired and fed up to me, because I see the eyelids as being outside of the centre of its face rather than inside, if you get me. So, continuing the grind, Kakuna reaches level 8, then level 9, and finally level 10, evolving into Beedrill. Beedrill I feel is one of those I'd never think about if it wasn't for the anime. It always just worked so perfect to me as a neutral antagonist, showing that even early in the journey, some Pokemon can just be dangerous in the wild. It does look pretty cool though, but I've never been able to make one work well for me in gameplay. I tried once and it just wasn't very good. Not the worst experience trying to make a Pokemon fit in my main team, but still down there. All that's left now is Metapod. Metapod can be a huge pain in the arse to gain those last 3 levels with because it just feels like it takes forever. It just has tackle and it's not a very strong one. So it's a few minutes between it reaching level 8, level 9 and finally level 10, evolving it into Butterfree. I'm sure most people my age got their attachment to Butterfree through the anime, but for me it was Yellow. I didn't know I could get a Mankey, so the only way for me to deal with Brock was a Butterfree with Confusion, and it stayed in my party through the rest of that playthrough until that classmate's brother saved over it. Shame it doesn't get Confusion and Evolution in Red and Blue. And yeah, it's another cute one. That's the Viridian grind done, so I drop Butterfree and Beedrill off in the PC forever and get back Nidoran and Spearow. So let's skim through Viridian Forest in Red. I get the antidote from the tree, pick up the Pokeball and battle the first Bugcatcher. Pidgey reaches level 8 during this. I take on the second Bugcatcher and Spearow reaches level 8 along with the male Nidoran. I get the second antidote, the potion, the hidden potion and defeat the final Bugcatcher, getting my female Nidoran to level 8. I catch a level 4 Weedle, which is the common one in Red as it and Caterpie have had their rarities swapped, followed by a Pikachu that will also stay neglected. Getting myself a level 3 Caterpie doesn't take anywhere near as long as it took for a Weedle in Blue. Now for the grind to level 10. First the female Nidoran, then the male Nidoran, then Spearow, then Pidgey and finally Rattata. I go to the Pewter City Pokemon Center and swap out Rattata and the female Nidoran for Weedle and Caterpie. It takes 7 minutes at triple speed to get Weedle to level 7 for Kakuna. 10 minutes later Caterpie joins it and I get Metapod. It takes another 15 minutes for something to happen before Kakuna reaches level 10 and I get Beedrill. And then another 4 minutes before Metapod joins it and I have a Butterfree. I then dump them both for my Nidoran and Rattata. And now for Yellow, there are some slight changes to this place in this version. 2 new trainers are added, a new one marked A is directly west of the tree at the start, and a new one marked D is in the north and south moving part near the end. I get the antidote in the tree, then talk to the woman in the grass. She's looking for a Pikachu, but since this is Yellow, they don't appear here anymore. This means that the last trainer type makes its first appearance early in Yellow, normally not appearing until Route 3. She has a level 6 female Nidoran followed by a male one at the same level, they're no problem. I catch a level 5 Caterpie, grab the Pokeball and take on the first Bugcatcher. His team has been changed and instead of a level 6 Weedle and Caterpie, he now has 2 level 7 Caterpies. The first one gets my Mankey to level 8 and the second gets my Spearow to level 8. Yellow also makes Pidgeys appear in the Viridian Forest. I take on the second Bugcatcher and his team has been changed as well. His level 2 Weedles and level 7 Kakuna have been swapped for 2 level 6 Metapods and a level 6 Caterpie. The first Metapod gets my male Nidoran to level 8 and taking out the Caterpie and second Metapod gets my female one to level 8 as well. The antidote north of him has been changed to a potion too. Next comes a new Bugcatcher they added. He has a level 8 Caterpie followed by a level 8 Metapod that get my Rattata to level 8. I get the now second potion and then the hidden third one in front of the final Bugcatcher. His level 9 Weedle was swapped for a level 10 Caterpie. It's not much harder than it was before. And now for the grind. Rattata is the first one to reach level 10, followed by Spearow 4 minutes later. Grinding Spearow is tougher in here in Yellow thanks to Pidgey's presence no longer making Peck super effective against 95% of all possible encounters. Female Nidoran is next 2 minutes later, and another Yellow addition is the 1% chance of finding a wild Pidgeotto in the Viridian Forest, to be able to reenact Ash catching one there in the anime. I don't catch one myself as I'll be needing to level up to 36 anyway, so I'll just get one leveling Pidgey as normal. They are quite strong for this part of the game though, so they're not really good for fast grinding. But taking it out gets Mankey to level 9 and in Yellow only teaches it Low Kick to give players another option for dealing with Brock. It also got Pikachu to level 12. After a few more minutes, Mankey reaches level 10. In comparison, male Nidoran reaches level 10 in the blink of an eye. That's the current party, so it's off to the Pokemon Center in Pewter City. The Jigglypuff in here now has its own unique sprite and having it sing puts Pikachu to sleep. At this point I also check in with Pikachu's feelings and he's come around to me by now. I drop off both Nidorans in the PC and get Pidgey and Caterpie. 5 minutes into this grind, Pidgey reaches level 10. 3 battles later, Caterpie reaches level 7 and I get a Metapod. And in this game, on evolution, it will actually learn Harden. A further 10 minutes grinding in Route 2 gets it to level 10 and gets me that Butterfree. For this game, Butterfree learns Confusion at level 10 on evolution. With that grind done, it's time for another trade. Blue doesn't get the Mankey line and Yellow doesn't get the Weedle line due to Ash being shown on screen failing to catch one, and so the extra ones I caught in each game get traded. So before doing Pewter Gym in Blue, I have this Mankey to catch up, swapping the male Nidoran for it. Due to being traded from another game, it gains a slight boost in XP, but since I have no badges it can also be disobedient. So in terms of time taken for the grind, they kind of cancel each other out. It just takes 7 minutes to get it from level 3 to level 10, but since this is Blue, it doesn't get low kick. Red has no trading this time, so I just have the Weedle I sent to Yellow to level up. So yeah, for the reason I gave, it made sense to make Weedles unavailable to match the anime. It does also make me wonder if they should have also stuck a bug catcher with a pincer into Viridian Forest to reference the samurai. But maybe even a low level pincer might have been too difficult for new players to deal with that early. It takes just 3 minutes for Weedle to reach level 7 and become a Kakuna with that boosted XP. It then takes a further 4 minutes for it to reach level 10 and become a Beedrill so I can dump it in the PC and never use it again. And so, nearly 8,000 words into this script, I'm finally moving on from the Viridian Forest. Time to have a little look around Pewter City before checking out its gym. There's still a load of tutorial NPCs around explaining move learning, the repel item keeping wild Pokemon away and such. I can have one guy lead me to the museum in the north. It costs 50 Pokédollars to get in, where I can get a look at the fossils of an extinct Aerodactyl and Kabutops on the bottom floor. Upstairs is their space exhibit with a moonstone from Mount Moon, and the guy who talks about buying a colour TV to watch the moon landing, which happened on the same date as it did in our real world, along with a model of the real-life space shuttle Columbia only 7 years before the disaster that destroyed it. That's all I can do in this place for now, but I'll be coming back later. I can't leave town to the east for Route 3 or else this guy will force me on a walk to the gym. Thing is, I do have fake memories of just walking past this guy with no badges, and yet as soon as I read on the internet that I can't, suddenly I can't do it anymore. So it's time to take on that first gym. We have that welcome champ in the making guy who I'm pretty sure I'm talking to for the first time in over 20 years. This is the smallest gym in the game, with only one other trainer to face, so is very easily skipped if I want. It's a junior trainer with 2 Pokemon, first being a level 11 Diglett, but I have a Squirtle with Bubble so I very easily destroy it. And that's followed by a level 11 Sandshrew, which also falls to Bubble, getting Squirtle to level 13. And with that guy done, I move forward to Brock. It's so strange coming back and his overworld sprite is just some dude. And as a kid who was used to the anime, he felt a lot more serious than I was expecting from him in his 5 seconds of screen time here. Just standing there, stern-faced, crossing his arms with no shirt on. His level 12 Geodude cannot take Bubble and goes down faster than the junior trainer's Pokemon. Squirtle reaches level 14. He next sends out a level 14 Onix and wastes its only turn using Bide, as Bubble once again tears it down. As a reward for my victory, Brock gives me the Boulder Badge. Traded Pokemon up to level 10 will now obey me fully. I can use Flash outside of battle even though I won't get it for a bit, and he gives me TM34 which teaches Bide. Bide is absolutely not worth it, so I won't be punishing any of my Pokemon by teaching it to them. Needing to let the opponent hit me twice and hope I don't faint just to pull off one attack? No thanks. And now for the red run of this gym. Of course, since the Pokemon in Brock's gym resist most of Charmander's moves, your best shot is either over-leveling or working on other Pokemon. But with red and blue, you still don't have many good alternatives until yellow upgraded some early Pokemon move pools. Even still, with the junior trainer, I Ember through his Diglett as it doesn't resist fire and still does decent damage. I even burn it and the following Sandshrew, which is burn luck I've never had before. Taking it out brings Charmander to level 13. With Brock's Geodude, I keep up the Ember brute forcing and get Charmander to level 14. I have to use a potion against Onix and it gets close, but I just managed to defeat it without losing Charmander, getting the Boulder Badge and TM34. I still remember my first time beating Brock as a kid. My Charmander was down and all I had was my only other Pokemon, the level 6 Caterpie. And because Onix kept using Screech, it never damaged me so I slowly plinked it to death. And that got Caterpie to level 7 and my first ever evolution in a Pokemon game. Bear in mind, I still didn't know what triggered evolutions first time because I was bad, so it seemed like a moment right out of the anime, where I gained an evolution through winning an impossible battle. While most of that original attempt at the game is a blur thanks to it being 22 years ago, that moment is the one I remember most vividly. And now for yellow. One thing I should bring up is that since this version was made after the release of the Game Boy Color, the game's colour scheme changes depending on the town I'm in. So after Viridian City being green, Pewter City turns everything grey. And considering all the cities are named after colours, it was a nice touch back then. To make up for Pikachu not being a good starter for this gym, all the Pokemon in here have had their levels lowered. Both the junior trainers Diglett and Sandshrew were reduced from level 11 to level 9. I used Butterfree's confusion to take them both out in no time, wasting experience that could have gone to Mankey in retrospect and getting Butterfree to level 11. But Mankey gets to go against Brock, whose sprite has been redrawn to wear his original anime outfit. His Pokemon have been weakened too, as Geodude has gone down to level 10 and lost Defense Curl. Mankey's low kick easily takes it out. Onix has also been dropped 2 levels, down to level 12, though it was given Bind to make up for it, and Bind takes a lot of health from Mankey thanks to the way it works in this generation. But I get the low kicks in and win in the end, getting Mankey to level 11. I get my 3rd Boulder Badge and TM34. Back to Blue, and now Brock is defeated, that nosy, pushy prick at the east end of town is gone, and I can move on to Route 3, which has one of the most nostalgic route themes in the series for me. Continuing straight on has me face the first lass in Red and Blue. She has a level 9 Pidgey, followed by a second level 9 Pidgey, and even though she initiated the battle, I'm the mean one for winning. Going north has a bug catcher claim he met me in the Viridian Forest, but trainers in Generation 1 don't have names yet, and I never bothered to check the names in the remake to make sure he's telling the truth. He has a level 10 Caterpie, followed by a level 10 Weedle, and then a second level 10 Caterpie. Taking them all out gets my Spearow to level 11. Taking a few steps east then has me battle the infamous Shorts boy, giving me his unsolicited opinions on Shorts. At least it's not an unsolicited Star Wars opinion. This is the first youngster you can battle in the series, and he has a level 11 Rattata, which is easy enough, but what I always remembered this for is his level 11 Ekans after this. This thing gave me so much trouble as a kid due to the way Wrap worked in Generation 1. Get caught in one Wrap and you're stuck taking damage for several turns, unable to make a move of your own. And when you get free, it probably gets you right into another Wrap. As a kid, I've had entire teams wiped by this Ekans. In the end, I don't even mess about, and after getting caught in a Wrap, I swap straight to Squirtle to tough it out and take it down. After healing, I go east a little bit more and talk to a second bug catcher. He has a level 9 Weedle, level 9 Kakuna, level 9 Caterpie, and level 9 Metapod. My Spearow defeats them all no problem with Peck and reaches level 12. He complains about being able to win if he had new Pokemon, when all of his were a single level away from evolution. I jump over the ledge to the south for a purely optional youngster. He also looks to have strong opinions on shorts. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of wearing shorts. I don't want people seeing my legs. He has one level 14 Spearow, the highest level from a generic trainer so far, but for some reason it never uses a single offensive move. It just leers at me several turns in a row while I quick attack all its health away. My Rattata reaches level 11. North of the previous bug catcher I faced is another lass, who seems to have become smitten by the blank expression Red was giving her. She starts with a level 10 Rattata that gets my Mankey to level 11, and follows it with a level 10 male Nidoran. Continuing east and moving south has me face one more bug catcher. He has a level 11 Caterpie which gets my Pidgey to level 11, followed by a level 11 Metapod. Who are these people not letting the Metapods evolve? From here I can go east again where there's more tall grass and the final trainer of this route, another lass. She has only one Pokemon, a level 14 Jigglypuff. This is actually the biggest challenge I've faced so far, as it puts my Pidgey to sleep and knocks out my female Nidoran. I take it out with Rattata and get Pidgey to level 12, teaching it Quick Attack. With all of the trainers taken out, there's one more wild Pokemon to catch here. There is a 10% chance of finding a Jigglypuff here. The one I find is level 3, which makes it harder to weaken without taking it out in one hit. But I don't plan on making one part of any game's final team, so level doesn't matter in any other way. It just takes a couple Pokeballs to catch it. Jigglypuff is one of those Pokemon I only tend to see hatred towards, and that's mainly because of Smash Bros fans blaming it for being the only reason their favourite Pokemon isn't in. More often than not people who want Meowth, I've noticed. But without getting into my opinions of it in Smash, which I'd like to save for if I ever do that game, I like Jigglypuff. A lot of it is, once again, anime influenced. Can't help it, the anime and cards were just a huge part of my experience with Pokemon when it was at its biggest. And then there was my old days messing around with Mugen, and watching YouTube videos of that over 15 years ago, mainly Judge Spear videos seeing Jigglypuff taking on the likes of Homer Simpson and the Predator. Even as I drifted away from this franchise, Jigglypuff has just always been around to me. Continuing to the east some more takes me to the western side of Route 4, where there's just a patch of grass, a Pokemon Center to the north, and next to it the entrance to Mount Moon, which cuts me off from Route 4's western side. We've already heard about Team Rocket causing trouble in Mount Moon, but a guy with a newspaper clipboard lets me know they've also attacked citizens in Cerulean City. Stuff like this, teasing little events further on I'd long forgotten, since I've played these games so many times I know what to do, and so never actually talk to unimportant NPCs. And when you consider that this is only my second playthrough in the last 15 or so years, there's a lot of flavour text I'm forgetting. I'm only doing so this time to experience as much game as possible for these videos. But most important is this con artist selling a Magikarp for an outrageous 500 Poké Dollars. Even if this wasn't a 100% playthrough where I must make every permanent action, I still always buy this knowing I can get them for free later. Everyone knows Magikarp's deal, and I doubt I'll have people watching who don't know Pokemon but just really like to listen to my voice instead, so I'll not act all spoiler shy about it. Magikarp just works really well as a joke Pokemon before evolving, not just from starting with Splash for so many levels, but just its face. They give it the perfect face that screams stupid and useless without going too far with it. And of course the idea of such a Pokemon that starts off worthless and a nightmare to train, but makes up for it with a powerful evolution is such an obvious idea for an RPG. Magikarp's just really greatly designed. I want to do a bit of grinding before Mount Moon, so I swap out Pidgey and Spearow for Magikarp and the male Nidoran. I want everyone to match those two at level 12, so I get battling in Route 4's one patch of grass. It takes 4 battles for Rattata to reach level 12. Next is the male Nidoran reaching level 11 and 12, then Mankey reaching level 12, female Nidoran reaching 11 and 12. That's all my evolving, or non-benched, Pokemon at level 12, with the exception of Magikarp, who I intend to train using Mount Moon's trainers. And now back to the red run of these. I take out Route 3's first Lass, then the first Bug Catcher, which gets Spearow to level 12. Shaw's Youngster is next and his Ekans gets Pidgey to level 11. I challenge the second Lass and get Pidgey to level 12. Then the second Bug Catcher, which gets my female Nidoran to level 11 from his first 2 Pokemon, then level 12 from his last 2. The optional Bug Catcher gets my male Nidoran to level 11. The final Bug Catcher then gets Spearow to level 12. With the final Lass, I try leveling my Rattata on it, but a Jigglypuff puts it to sleep and takes it out, then does the same with my male Nidoran. So I have my Charmander defeat it, getting Charmander to level 15, teaching it Leer. Jigglypuff takes a bit longer to appear than it did in Blue, and it was a higher level so I could weaken it and make it easier to capture. I continue to the Pokemon Center on Route 4 and buy the overpriced Magikarp. After that, it doesn't take long to get Rattata and then the male Nidoran to level 12. In Yellow, I bench Butterfree forever and get back my male Nidoran. Unlike previous locations in Yellow, every single one of Route 3's trainers is unchanged, so I can get through this part quicker. The first Lass's Pidgeys fall easily to my Pikachu. The first Bug Catcher once again gets my Spearow to level 11. I take on Shaw's Youngster once again to have his Ekans get my Pikachu to level 13. Next comes the second Lass, who gets my Mankey to level 12. The second Bug Catcher then gets Spearow to level 12. I then take on the optional Bug Catcher and the final one with nothing new happening before I challenge the final Lass. Her Jigglypuff gets my Rattata to level 11. What has been changed about Route 3 is its random encounters. Jigglypuff can no longer be found here. Instead I end up with a level 8 Sandshrew. Like how Mankey was once a red exclusive appearing earlier than it did there, Sandshrew is a blue exclusive appearing earlier than normal. Sandshrew is one of those Pokemon I just never really think about until I see it again and just remember, oh yeah, they're pretty cute. I'm sure most people who haven't got all 30 quintillion Pokemon perfectly memorised have those. The ones you just never think of, but when you are reminded of them, you remember them fondly. I've never used one seriously before though. Thanks to the increased levels of the wild Spearows here, I stick around to level Pikachu to level 14. It's then on to Route 4's Pokemon Center and buying that Magikarp. I completely forgot to mention until now that nurses now have chances stood next to them helping like in the anime in Yellow. Thanks to Sandshrew I have 1 more Pokemon to grind up here than in Blue and 2 more than in Red. First to reach level 12 here is Rattata. It's very hard to level Sandshrew here as it just has Scratch and can easily be taken down by other Sandshrews. Pidgey hits level 12 next, followed by the female Nidoran, which in Yellow learns Double Kick at this level. Then the male Nidoran not long after, also learning Double Kick at the same level. I managed to get Sandshrew to level 9 after a long struggle, then level 10 5 minutes later, learning Sand Attack. Things get even quicker after that and I get it to level 11 much easier, and then level 12 not long after. With all that done, it's back to Blue, and next to the Pokemon Center is the entrance to Mount Moon. So to start with, from the entrance I go west to grab the first item, and to the northwest for a second. After that I go all the way east, taking on the trainers marked A and B, before I go north and east again down to another floor. A few steps in I get my first new Pokemon, a Zubat. This one I catch is level 10. Everyone's complained about Zubat's omnipresence throughout the first 4 generations, and yeah, I agree. I got really sick of seeing them in every cave. It got worse in this playthrough leveling one up to evolve for the Pokédex, but I'll talk about that ordeal later. But divorced from gameplay, just looking at it without thinking of the tedium associated with it, it's kind of cute at least. Moving on, the first item is TM12, which teaches Water Gun. A pretty good one to hold on to if I ever need another strong water attack. though with me starting with Squirtle I don't need it as much in my blue playthrough. The second item is just a potion. The trainer marked here tells me about dodgy people hanging out in this place and suspects me. He's a bug catcher with a level 11 Weedle. Throughout my entire time here I'm keeping Magikarp in the first spot to make it share experience. He next sends out a level 11 Kakuna and through switch training, Magikarp reaches level 6. Moving on past him, my next new Pokemon is a Geodude which I catch at level 10. People often feel the same way towards Geodude that they do about Zubat, but in this case, I don't. I like Geodude. Once again it may be the anime, but I've always liked it just from the stickers and cards, even before I knew Brock had a Geodude since he used it so infrequently in the anime. People dislike a lot of the object Pokemon, or the, I guess, more generic ones, but I just never have. The ice cream and rubbish bag in Gen 5 never bothered me, and neither have some of Generation 1's more simple designs, because I still find a lot of them memorable and endearing, and Geodude is one of those. I mean, there are some of the more generic ones I don't like, and we'll get to those later, but not Geodude. Next I get challenged by the trainer I marked B, alas waiting for her friends to find her. She only has one Pokemon, the first appearance of Clefairy at level 14. My Rattata takes it out alone, but nothing else happens. I then go down the ladder. The second floor is 4 tunnels connecting to other floors, but the individual tunnels are so straightforward I won't bother mapping them. It's just to walk south and west to another ladder. It leads to a small section of basement 2 that's also too simple to bother mapping. North of the ladder is my first meeting with Team Rocket. This one starts with a level 11 Sandshrew. My Squirtle easily takes it out, getting Magikarp to level 7 and Squirtle to level 15, teaching it Water Gun. Next is a level 11 Rattata that I take on with my own, and then finally a level 11 Zubat that I defeat with my female Nidoran. To the east is a HP up. I usually end up hoarding these stat boosting items as I can never decide who to use them on. I then go back to the first floor the way I came. On the way back, a wild Geodude gets my Magikarp to level 8. Before getting out of the tunnel, I hang around a bit until I find a wild Paras, which I catch at level 10. Paras was one of those ones I never cared for as a kid, and would usually be one of the ones I'd forget if I had to name them all. I just look at it and feel nothing. Just doesn't do anything for me. Back on the first floor, I go south to take on the trainer marked A. Southwest of him is my first new item, then east for a second, and north to battle the trainer marked B. Then it's all the way north, grabbing a third item on the way. From there I go west to the next wall, taking on trainer C, and then south down another ladder. The trainer I marked A is the first super nerd I faced. He starts with a level 11 Magnemite. My male Nidoran horn attacks it to death and my Magikarp reaches level 9. Next is a level 11 Voltorb, which defeating gets my male Nidoran to level 13. The first item I get is yet another potion, and the second is a rare candy. I'm saving my rare candies for one specific Pokemon near the end, you can probably guess. The trainer I marked B is another bug catcher. He has a level 10 Caterpie, a level 10 Metapod and a second level 10 Caterpie. Taking this one out gets Magikarp to level 10. The third item I get is an escape rope. I always forget these even exist, and so very rarely end up using them. Trainer C is another lass. She has 2 Pokemon, first being the first appearance of Oddish at level 11. I get cocky and it defeats my Mankey, so my Rattata ends up beating it instead. She has another new Pokemon making its debut in this battle, a level 11 Bellsprout. I take it out but no one levels up. After healing up I go down that next ladder. This next tunnel is just another walk west to another small section of this large floor not worth mapping yet. There's an item with a rocket grunt staring right at it. He starts with a level 12 Zubat followed by a level 12 Ekans. Defeating it gets Magikarp to level 11. With him beat I can get the item which is TM1 Mega Punch. Hanging around in this room a bit and Squirtle reaches level 16, evolving into Wartortle. I feel Wartortle gets the least play of all 9 of the original 3 starters lines. The first stages and last stages obviously get more than the middle stages. But then of the 3, Charmeleon has ties to Charizard and a memorable anime role as a start of Ash's Charizard's disobedience. Ivysaur was probably the least remembered and popular of the 3, but was lucky enough to be in Smash Bros for a boost in recognisability, but it seems Wartortle just doesn't get much. Maybe things have changed since I fell off a franchise, but all I remember Wartortle getting is a couple anime episodes, both pre-Johto, where Ash's Squirtle ends up competitive with one. But as I said, it's been a while, maybe things have changed since. It's a shame because I like Wartortle quite a bit. Just the changes in colour and expression make it this perfect in-between of the cute Squirtle and cool Blastoise. I think I like it even more than Squirtle, but that may just be Wartortle's underuse bringing out my contrarian nature. If you've watched my fighting game videos and see how I appreciate the less seen characters, you know what I mean. But evolving Squirtle wasn't what I was aiming for here. as I keep triple speeding through random encounters until I get that 6% Clefairy and catch one. Like Jigglypuff, Clefairy is another memorable Pokemon I've always liked, but I've never used. I like all the bits of lore they give us with the claim of them being from the moon, and how later games had little Easter eggs tying them to this place. Why I say that so weird. Little Easter eggs tying them to this place. I remember Clefairy being a pretty big one back in the day. Once again, the anime positioning it as a rival to Jigglypuff in one episode helped, but it's fallen off since as the franchise expanded, and without a long-running anime role or playable Smash Bros. Role, it looks to have been left behind. And now back to the first floor. From the ladder I go south and west, taking on the trainer marked A, then northwest to pick up the item and battle the trainer marked B before going down one last ladder. Trainer A is a youngster with 3 Pokemon. First a level 10 Rattata, a second level 10 Rattata, and a level 10 Zubat. The last one gets my female Nidoran to level 13. The last item on this floor is a Moonstone, and I battle the trainer, who is the game's first hiker. He starts with a level 10 Geodude, then a second level 10 Geodude, getting my Magikarp to level 12. Then finally a level 10 Onix. Wartortle's water gun just destroys them all. Down the ladder and this tunnel is a short walk south and east to get back to the second basement. This is the floor where I faced those Rocket Grunts, just in closed-off areas I can't reach from this main section, so I've crossed them off the map. I start by going east, down some stairs to take on Trainer A, then east some more, up some more stairs until I turn south, going all the way. I then go all the way west and then north, battling Trainer B on the way. I go north more, moving east to inspect this one spot for a hidden item, then north to take on Trainer C. Grab a fossil and then follow the rest of the path to the ladder. That first trainer is a Rocket Grunt and his only Pokemon is a level 16 Raticate. Now this was another roadblock for Kid Me, as this Raticate's Hyper Fang can destroy an underleveled team. Even now it takes down my Wartortle, mainly because switch training Magikarp gave it a free shot. In the end, my male Nidoran gets the final blow, getting it to level 14 and teaching it Poison Sting. Trainer B is also a Rocket. He's one of the few who tells me why they're there, to gather Pokemon fossils, revive these non-extinct species and sell them for big money. He starts with a level 13 Rattata, which gets my own Rattata to level 13. Then comes an easy level 13 Zubat. That hidden item off to the side is a second Moonstone. Trainer C has found 2 fossils and isn't willing to share them, so he starts a battle. Team Rocket failed to get a single fossil, but this super nerd managed 2. He starts with a level 12 Grimer, which gets my Magikarp to level 13. Then comes level 12 Voltorb and then a level 12 Koffing. I lose my female Nidoran, but still win. The super nerd decides to share and lets me have one of the 2 fossils. I take the Dome fossil because I like the Pokemon it gets me more. I then go down the ladder, which leads to one more ladder leading back outside. But now for Red. I grab TM12, the potion, and catch a level 9 Zubat. I battle the first bug catcher, getting Magikarp to level 6. Then I take on the first last, but no level ups. I take the first ladder down and battle the first Rocket. Magikarp reaches level 7. I get the HP up and catch a level 9 Geodude on my way to the first floor. Magikarp reaches level 8. Back on the first floor I catch a level 8 Paras and battle the first super nerd. Defeating him gets the male Nidoran to level 13. I get the second potion, the rare candy, and battle the second bug catcher. Magikarp reaches level 9 and Pidgey reaches level 13. Get the escape rope and battle the second lass. Finally a trainer that Charmander is a far better starter for, as it easily defeats her Orish and Bellsprout. From the Bellsprout, Magikarp reaches level 10 and Charmander reaches level 16, evolving into Charmeleon. Charmeleon is also overshadowed by its younger and older selves, but not as much as Wartortle is. I also like Charmeleon quite a bit. I like its darker red colour scheme over Charmander and Charizard's orange, and like Wartortle, it's the perfect halfway point between cute Charmander and big intimidating Charizard. And once again, it had the perfect design to be cast as an arrogant little shit in the anime. I take the second ladder to the second Rocket, defeating him and getting that TM1. This time I get a Clefairy as soon as I start looking and catch it. Back on the first floor I take out the youngster again without any new level ups. I get the first Moonstone and battle the hiker, getting Magikarp to level 11. Down the second basement again and the Raticate Rocket takes out a couple of my Pokemon, and even then no one gained a level up. I take on the last Rocket here and get Magikarp to level 12. I get the hidden second Moonstone and battle the super nerd. His Voltorb gets my female Nidoran to level 13. His Koffing then gets my Pidgey to level 14. This time, to make sure I can get all Pokemon, I take the Helix fossil. No, do not. It was never funny. And with that I leave. And now for Yellow. Sandshrews have also been added to Mount Moon in this version, but just the first floor, replacing Paras. Paras still appears on other floors though. I get the TM12, the potion, and catch a level 10 Zubat. Then I take on the first bug catcher. Trainers are mostly unchanged in here until I get close to the end. He gets Magikarp to level 6. I then defeat Velas and go down the stairs to take on the first rocket. Magikarp reaches level 7 and I pick up the HP up. On the way back to the first floor I catch a level 11 Geodude. I then take on the first Super Nerd again. Magikarp reaches level 8 and female Nidoran reaches level 13. I grab the second potion and encounter a Clefairy which has only a 1% chance on this floor and catch it. I get the rare candy and take on the second bug catcher. Magikarp reaches level 9. I get the escape rope and take on Velas, but I get nothing from this battle this time. Down the second ladder to take on the second rocket. Magikarp reaches level 10 and male Nidoran reaches level 13. I get TM1 and catch myself a second Clefairy for a later in-game trade. This is followed by catching a level 13 Paras. Back to the first floor to battle the youngster. Nothing much from him. I get the Moonstone and battle the Hiker. My Nidoran's double kicks destroy his team utterly, getting Magikarp to level 11. Back to the bottom floor and we now have some significant changes. The first Rocky, who just had Eradicate, has had his entire team changed to be much easier. He now has 2 Pokemon, a level 13 Rattata that gets my Pikachu to level 15. This is the first instance in any playthrough where I hit the 4 move limit, as Pikachu wants to learn Double Team. I ignore it. Next is a level 15 Zubat that goes down in one hit. The final rocket in red and blue has been removed from this version, and I get that hidden Moonstone before battling the Super Nerd. His Coughing gets both my Magikarp to level 12 and my female Nidoran to level 14. At this point it doesn't matter which one I take, but I get a second Dome Fossil. I go to leave, but then find out why that last Rocket Grunt was removed. He's been replaced with Jesse and James from the anime. Although their names are never said throughout the entire game, even just being called Rocket like the Grunts. As you'd expect, they have their Pokemon from the anime, starting with a level 14 Ekans, which very nearly KOs my Pikachu with Wrap before I get a perfectly timed critical hit. Next comes their Meowth at level 14. He takes out my Mankey, but my male Nidoran finishes the job. Finally a level 14 Coughing. The same Nidoran just barely wings, getting to level 14 itself. They blast off, but use the wrong line, instead using one from their motto, and from there I can leave as normal. Now some of you may notice that I missed something in here, but I will get it, just not for a very long time. I missed it in all 3 versions too. Back to blue and we're on the western half of Route 4 now. To the east is this enclosed space that looks to have nothing in it, but there's one specific spot containing a hidden Great Ball. East of that is TM4, Whirlwind, which I will not use because it's a worthless waste of a move spot. I jump down this ledge with no way back across, so I'm cut off from every area that came before for a bit. In the patch of grass here I can catch a level 6 Sandshrew. I then go east into Cerulean City. Now for red, I get the Great Ball and the TM4. In this loose grass, since Sandshrew is not available in red, Ekans appears and I catch one at level 10. Ekans is alright. It's one of these that I don't think much about until it evolves. I think I just don't care much for the pattern and colour scheme. That and once again the anime making its evolution the far more memorable one. Arbok was around for so many years that it was really strange catching one of those first 29 episodes where they were still Ekans and Coughing. With that caught, it's on to Cerulean City. And of course with yellow I get the Great Ball and the TM4, but there are no new Pokemon here, so it's straight into Cerulean City, which is an incredibly bright blue in this version, to heal. Back to blue, I now have 2 Moonstones, 2 Pokemon that evolve through Moonstones, and access to my PC again, so I withdraw Clefairy and Jigglypuff. I give Clefairy the first Moonstone to get a Clefable. Clefable's fine, it's just one of those cases where the first stage is so much more memorable that the evolution doesn't get much thought from me. I think making it bigger and those other slight alterations make it lose a bit of the charm Clefairy had. And I then use my second to evolve Jigglypuff into Wigglytuff. Pretty much the same as I said about Clefable, though between those two I like Wigglytuff more. Jigglypuff's balloon design was perfected first try, so I think the change in its body shape can make it look more awkward in comparison. With those evolutions done, I box the 2 of them forever. I also go back to Route 4 to quickly catch a second Sandshrew to trade to Red later. In the house next to the Pokemon Center is the first introduction to in-game trades, as an old guy wants a Poliwhirl and is willing to give me a Jinx for it. But I won't be able to get a Poliwhirl for a while yet. There's the bike shop, where a bike is the single most expensive object in the country, costing more than the money cap. The gym is next to the Pokemon Center and I'm not touching it yet. Does anyone ever do Cerulean Gym before Nugget Bridge and its connecting routes? But either way, I need to save the gym until later to do an important glitch. There's a house in the northwest corner where a guy can explain to me what each of the badges does. More importantly, there's a hidden rare candy in his back garden. And of course, there's this guy, who I won't be able to reach for a long time. It's obvious he's just standing in front of the cave entrance, but as an 8-year-old looking at him through my small Game Boy Color screen, I was one of those people who thought there was just this one NPC who took up 2 tiles because he had a giant afro. And then the last house in the northeast corner is blocked by a policeman as the inhabitants have been robbed by Team Rocket. Thing is, even here you can see the Rocket Grunt is still in the back garden. All there is to do is leave town to the north and run into Blue again. He's all cocky, claiming I'm struggling behind and he'll show off what he's caught to me, only for him to not even have the full team of 6 yet. First is a level 8 Pidgeotto, his Pidgey from the previous battle evolved. And this is where my spreading out the XP mostly evenly came back to bite me. My Wartortle is almost taken down, so I have to sacrifice my male Nidoran to heal it. I thought I could then sneak in a defeat and some XP for my Rattata, but since I forgot to heal after catching that second Sandshrew, it doesn't work. So discounting my Magikarp, that leaves me with just 3 Pokemon left already, so my female Nidoran takes it down. This at least gets Wartortle to level 17. Next comes a level 15 Abra. It only knows Teleport, so this one is a free battle, so I let my Spearow take it. His third Pokemon is a level 15 Rattata that defeats my Spearow with just a single Hyper Fang. It then takes out my female Nidoran because I got cocky, so just my Wartortle is left. His Hyper Fang really reduces its health before I take it down. Magikarp at least reaches level 14, and then comes the level 17 Bulbasaur. I dragged it out as long as I could, but in the end I lost this battle. I honestly can't remember the last time I lost this battle. So I go back to Route 4 for a bit of a grind. First my female Nidoran reaches level 14, then male Nidoran reaches level 15, then my Spearow to level 13, Rattata to level 14, female Nidoran to level 15, Rattata to level 15, Spearow to level 14, and then to level 15, teaching it Fury Attack. With those extra levels I take on Blue again. I still lost my Rattata thinking I was in with a chance, so I just have Wartortle take it down again. Then the female Nidoran gets the Abra and also takes down the Rattata. For the Bulbasaur I send out my Spearow, as Peck takes half of its health despite the 2 level difference. Shame there are no level ups from it. Blue says he's been to visit Bill, who created the Pokemon storage system, and he showed him his rare Pokemon to add some pages to the dex. Since we now know it was him who created the storage system, the Someone's PC option will now be called Bill's PC. Blue then sets off to let me take on Nugget Bridge. But first, Red. In the Pokemon Center I evolved my Clefairy and Jigglypuff just as I did in Blue. I grabbed that hidden rare candy, and since this is after doing the rival battle in Blue, I already know I need a leveling session. I catch a second Ekans to trade over to Blue and get Charmeleon to level 17. I then catch a third Ekans to trade over to Yellow. The male Nidoran is the first to reach level 15, followed by the female Nidoran, Pidgey, and finally Rattata. I then take on Blue. I once again keep throwing Rattatas at his Pidgeotto and losing them. My female Nidoran gets the finishing blow and defeats the Abra, reaching level 16. Pidgey defeats the Rattata, but I don't have a counter for his level 17 Squirtle yet. Well, there's my Pikachu, but I'm not leveling that now. I lose Pidgey, but my male Nidoran defeats it, getting Magikarp to level 13. Since my female Nidoran reached level 16, it evolves into Nidorina. Nidorina's alright, but it's probably my least favourite of the entire Nidoran line. I just find it the least memorable. Don't dislike it, but never really cared either. An interesting prototype for future evolution splits based on gender at least. But since her next evolution requires another Moonstone, meaning I don't need to level her anymore, she gets benched forever with the other stone evolvees and my early game bugs. After that it's on to Nugget Bridge. But before that, Yellow. Once again I evolve myself a Clefable, but not a Wigglytuff because Jigglypuff hasn't appeared yet. Cerulean City has had one big change in Yellow. The old man who'll trade a Jinx and his wife have been evicted in favour of this girl who fosters mistreated or abandoned Pokemon, and in another reference to Ash's anime journey, she has a Bulbasaur. I'm not good enough to have it though yet. You see, I remember the Prima guy telling me I needed to have completed this city's gym. That's not true at all, so you can imagine Kid Me's confusion on doing so and not being given the Bulbasaur. It's actually based on how much my Pikachu likes me, and it likes me more if I keep talking to it, so I put on triple speed and force small talk a million times until she gives me the Bulbasaur. Like Charmander, I made fun earlier, but I still like Bulbasaur. Maybe like so many others it's the anime, but Bulbasaur is my favourite of its line and one of my favourite grass starters overall. I definitely say I find it the cutest of the starters, but I don't really use it often. I know it works as the easy mode, being super effective against the first 2 gyms, but if I want an easy time, I usually just pick Squirtle and I'm left with other options for the second gym. I grab the rare candy and get to leveling. Pikachu reaches level 16 and the female Nidoran is the first of the others to reach level 15. Then Pikachu reaches level 17. Rattata reaches level 15 next, then Pikachu to level 18, and finally Mankey to level 15, teaching it Karate Chop before I take on Blue. His Spearow is now level 18 and Pikachu easily defeats it. No free battle for me this time, as in Yellow, instead of an Abra he has a level 15 Sandshrew. I defeat it with Rattata and get Magikarp to level 13. He still has a Rattata at the same level, followed by his Eevee at level 17. Double Kick destroys it. Blue goes off and I go to Nugget Bridge. And so back to Blue. Nugget Bridge is just one section of Route 24. He has 5 trainers I have to defeat for a prize, starting with Bugcatcher. Now there is really no reason to still have a level 14 Caterpie, or a level 14 Weedle. My Spearow wrecks them both. I move further north and take on the second, Alas. She has a level 14 Pidgey and a level 14 female Nidoran that gets my Magikarp to level 15 and finally teaches it Tackle so it no longer has to be a drain on everyone else's XP. I dump it off in the box and bring out my Pidgey before I go for round 3 against a youngster. He has a level 14 Rattata, a level 14 Ekans and a level 14 Zubat. My Rattata takes them all out easy. Next up is another lass. She has a level 16 Pidgey that gets my Rattata to level 16. Her second is a level 16 female Nidoran. For the 5th and final match, it's a junior trainer who just has a level 18 Mankey. My Spearow only just defeats it and it reaches level 16. At the end of the bridge is a guy who gives me the prize, a nugget. Okay, so this is just an item existing only to sell for a large amount of money. But for me, there's more to the memory of this. I didn't know what gold nuggets were, so the first time playing this as a kid, I thought I'd gone through 5 trainer battles for a single chicken nugget, and had no idea why it was worth so much money. Thing is, another kid in school called it a gold nugget, and it still didn't click. I just thought that later in the game I could also collect rare golden chicken nuggets. My cluelessness as a child aside, this guy turns out to be a Team Rocket recruiter. When he offers me a place in the organisation, he refuses to take no for an answer and tries to force me through battle. He starts with a level 15 Ekans that gets my male Nidoran to level 16. His other Pokemon is a level 15 Zubat that my Rattata easily beats. Since my male Nidoran is level 16, he evolves into Nidorino. I find Nidorino more memorable than Nidorina, though being part of Red's opening helps that a lot. But I also just think it looks cooler. I like the male Nidoran more though, but not by much. The Rocket Grunt laments that I could be an amazing member of Team Rocket. I bench Nidorino now I don't need to level him anymore and bring out the level 8 Sandshrew. Past Nugget Bridge, at the north end, I pick up a TM45 containing Thunder Wave. I admit to being a bit arse-brained when it comes to Pokemon moves, tending to ignore status-inflicting moves in favour of just big damage moves. I did make a bit of an effort this time to diversify some move pools more than I usually would. West of the bridge is this patch of grass with a trainer I must not defeat yet. So I try to get him off screen and run about the grass. And my first encounter is against my arch nemesis of this video, Abra. I fail to catch it first throw and it teleports away. But my next battle puts me against a Bellsprout that I catch at level 13. I like the entire Bellsprout line and their progression through evolution. I just love the blank face and gormless expression. And of course the anime made an impression with that one Pokemon League battle with the Bellsprout that was an amazing hand-to-hand fighter. I get a second Abra but it escapes again. Bellsprout doesn't appear in red, so I catch another one at level 12 to trade over. I lose a third Abra. The female Nidoran reaches level 16 and evolves into Nidorina. While trying for another Abra, Pidgey reaches level 13. Eventually I get a 4th Abra to appear and catch one at level 8. Abra in Generation 1 is a bit like Magikarp, having only one move that's not useful in battle until it evolves and learns something new. I will say I never really cared much about Abra compared to its evolutions, though the glitch it's going to allow me to pull off did make me gain some appreciation towards it. Thing is, with the trouble it takes to catch one, I still need a second. Pidgey reaches level 14 in the next battle and the one after is another Abra, but it escapes again, so does the next. Back at the centre to heal and I bench Nidorina forever and put away Sandshrew for now to bring out Abra so I can switch train it and also my Bellsprout. The next Abra escapes, but with the next one I try Wrap to trap it in the battle and stop it using Teleport. Abra is faster but the teleport fails, but then my Wrap misses and it gets away. After the next one is still faster, I decide to grind Bellsprout up a bit and move east to take on the trainers of Route 25. First, going from west to east is this Hiker. I think, perfect, Bellsprout would destroy the common Hiker Pokemon, but instead he starts with a level 15 Machop that I know Bellsprout wouldn't survive. It takes down my Spearow and so Pidgey barely finishes it, getting Abra to level 9. Next is more like what I was expecting as he sends out a level 15 Geodude. Bellsprout's Vine Whip one-shots it and Abra reaches level 10. I go north of him to find a hidden elixir in the northern wall. Moving on, next is this youngster. He starts with a level 15 Rattata and Hyperfang wipes out Bellsprout, so I let Wartortle do the fighting. His other Pokemon is a level 15 Spearow that gets Abra to level 11 and Wartortle to level 18. After healing, there's another Hiker south of that youngster. He just has a level 17 Onix which is no match for Bellsprout, Bellsprout reaches level 14 from this. Once again I move east to challenge this lass. She has a level 15 male Nidoran that gets Abra to level 12, and then a level 15 female Nidoran. I ignore the guy above her for now, and next take on another hiker. First is a level 13 Geodude that gets Abra to level 13. Then there's a second level 13 Geodude, a level 13 Machop, and a third level 13 Geodude that gets Bellsprout to level 15 and teaches it Poison Powder. The kid to the right I bait into walking out so I can get in that gap behind him after I'm done. He brags about having a girlfriend, which makes me want to humiliate him even more. He's another junior trainer and starts with a level 14 Rattata. At a hit from death, its Hyper Fang comes out first, for one turn only, criticals and defeats my Rattata. My Pidgey finishes the job and next is a level 14 Ekans. Abra reaches level 14 from it. I go through the gap I lured him out of to find TM19, Seismic Toss. I'm a bit fed up with switch training Abra, so I just use my 2 rare candies on it now to get it to level 16 and evolve it into Kadabra, which also teaches it Confusion. All the other rare candies in the game will be saved for another Pokemon though. I like Kadabra. Sometimes the middle evolutions suffer for being the least memorable, but I've always liked it more than Abra. It always gave off the image that it could have been the end of the evolution line and it would still work fine. Maybe Sabrina's anime Kadabra is the reason, like a lot of others, but I'm a fan regardless. I continue my journey east to take on another youngster. He has a level 14 Ekans and a level 14 Sandshrew. The two of them get my Spearow to level 17. Then as I reach this fence there's one more lass. She has a level 13 Oddish, a level 13 Pidgey and second level 13 Oddish. Inspecting the very first fence post right of here, I can find a hidden ether. At the end of this route is the sea cottage where Bill lives, but inside all I can see is a Pokemon. It's actually Bill and he's so into Pokemon he's done some fly shit to himself. He goes back inside his machine and I just have to fiddle with his computer to reverse it. But we never see what happened to the Pokemon he combined himself with. He's so thankful he lets me look at his Pokemon collection in the PC and he gives me a ticket to the SS Anne in Vermilion City. Looking at the computer shows it's just the Eevee line, but if I was really into my Pokédex scene count then those additions to that are welcome I guess. After healing I finally catch that second Abra. Time to move over to Red. At Nugget Bridge I take on the Bug Catcher, then the first lass. I swap out Nidorina for Spearow and battle the youngster. That's 3 trainers in a row with no level ups. The second lass is next and Magikarp reaches level 14. Then the junior trainer and I get the Nugget from the Rocket and take him on too. The male Nidoran reaches level 16 and evolves into Nidorino after I win. I bench him and bring out Ekans. I get TM45 and get in the grass. Spearow reaches level 13 and since Bellsprout isn't in red, I instead find a level 13 Oddish I catch. Oddish is one of those cases where all I can say is that it's cute, that's about it. I like it but otherwise it's the least interesting of its line to me. I also catch a second to trade to blue. Rattata reaches level 16 and I catch my first Abra at level 10 much quicker than I did in blue. And the second one shows up within 2 more battles and is caught on the first try. I dump Ekans in favour of Abra for more switch training and also swap Spearow for Oddish. I then take on Route 25, starting with the first hiker. Pidgey reaches level 16 and I get the hidden elixir. Next is the first youngster which gets Magikarp to level 15 so I can finally bench it and start switch training Abra. I defeat the second hiker, getting Abra to level 11. This youngster I skipped in blue first time I actually battle as I know I don't need him anymore. He has a level 17 Slowpoke that takes down both my Pidgey and Oddish before Rattata finishes it, getting Abra to level 12 and Rattata to level 17. The second lass is next, but nothing important happens. Third hiker next and from his first Geodude, Abra reaches level 13 and Oddish level 14. His last Geodude gets Abra to level 14, so I use my rare candies to evolve it into Kadabra. I take on the junior trainer and get the TM19 he was hiding. I battle the final youngster and get Oddish to level 15, teaching it Poison Powder, then the final lass who gets Kadabra to level 17. I pick up the hidden ether, help Bill and get the SS ticket. As for Yellow, the 2 lasses on Nugget Bridge have the same Pokemon but some changed attacks, but that's it. I defeat the Bug Catcher and while battling the first lass, the male Nidoran reaches level 16 and evolves into a Nidorino after the battle. And since I still have a second Moonstone from not having a Jigglypuff, I then evolve it straight into a Nidoking. Nidoking is my favourite of the Nido line, just barely edging out its counterpart. It just looks so cool. Shame I won't be using it in either of these versions. Although I will say it being 4'4" was a weird surprise. Even without the anime, it always came across as a huge, towering, threatening monster, but I'm 1.5 foot taller than one. That's not right. I swap him out for Spearow and take on the youngster. He gets Magikarp to level 14. Second last next and nothing happens. Then the junior trainer and I get the nugget and take on the recruiter. Next to where TM45 is, there's a trainer looking for someone to give his Charmander to, as he can't raise it right. This guy's supposed to be a stand-in for that guy from the anime, Damien I think, but this guy's not a prick and just not good at raising Pokemon. I take the TM45 and get into the grass. Oddish can be found here, which I catch at level 14. Bellsprout is here too, and I catch one at level 12. Like Jigglypuff, Abra has been pushed back a bit, and in its place is another one making its wild debut early, Venonat, which I catch at level 13. Venonat is cute thanks to having Butterfree's eyes, and I like it more than its evolution. That is literally it, I have nothing else to say. I get Magikarp to level 15 after this and move on to Route 25. Once again, the one last with Nidoran has gained some new attacks, but everything else is the same. The first hiker gets the female Nidoran to level 16 and evolves her into Nidorina. I get the hidden elixir and swap Nidorina for Pidgey. I defeat the first youngster and the second hiker gets Mankey to level 16. I defeat the second youngster and first lass, who gets my Spearow to level 13. I battle the second hiker and get Mankey to level 17. I lure out the junior trainer who gets Rattata to level 16. I grab the TM19 and take on the final youngster and second lass, who gets Spearow to level 14. I get the hidden ether and go help Bill. They add a bit of extra stuff here for Pikachu, as it'll look at Bill in confusion and then in complete shock after undoing his transformation. I like these extra little bits. I get the SS ticket and I'm on my way. Now for the glitch I've been hinting at. I approach the trainer I skipped on Route 24 and as soon as I step into battle triggering range, I mash pause so it triggers first and use Kadabra's teleport to return to the Pokemon Center. The trainer's exclamation point triggers just before I teleport and from there my menu is locked and I enter the Cerulean Gym. I battle this first trainer, the first swimmer in the game. He starts with a level 16 Horsey and then a level 16 Shelder. My Bellsprout destroys both and reaches level 16. With him defeated, I leave the gym and go back to Route 24. As soon as I enter, my locked menu forces itself open. I close it with the B button to trigger a battle with a level 7 Mew. I'm not going to explain how the entire glitch works because look at the length of the video, but I will say that the Pokemon that appears as part of this glitch is determined by the special stat of the last Pokemon I fought before returning to Route 24. And that swimmer's Shelder's special stat just happens to be the same number as Mew's internal ID in the game's code. Even weakened, Mew is still a legendary Pokemon, so it still takes a lot of Pokeballs and a lot of luck before it stays caught. I decided on all 3 games' final 6 Pokemon a year before I even started this playthrough, and Mew is going to stay in the blue team, just due to the novelty of having one without a cheating device. Red and Yellow will have to keep theirs boxed though. Speaking of Red, I do all the same stuff there. The teleport, taking on the swimmer, Oddish reaching level 16, and then returning to Route 24 to trigger the new battle. This one went much faster, only taking 4 balls to catch. Yellow on the other hand will have to wait a tiny bit longer to pull off this glitch since I don't have Abra yet. So, Mew. Just like most of us back when these games were new, every kid in my area who had the games were desperate to figure out how to get Mew. The giving a level 100 Nidoking to a rocket grunting Celadon was a common one, as was the SS Anne truck. The first film made that desire explode to those in our area, as it made Mew very cute and endearing with the way it just messes about for most of the film and does what it wants. But it's one of the few Pokemon in this game with actual lore tied around it to give it some mystery also makes it one of the most memorable of the original 151. Definitely one of my favourite legendaries. But most importantly, I'm glad this glitch exists, as otherwise I would not even be covering this game at all. I said before that the reason I stopped following the main series after White was a build-up of frustration towards one particular thing that eventually I got fed up with. And that is event-exclusive Pokemon. Just fuck events. I can forgive Mew in this game only because it was never intended to be distributed or part of the game, just hidden in there at the end of development for fun with no plan to do anything about it. Fine, but every other game after this has no excuse. I can even let off events that are just stuff like the free shiny legendaries, or Pokemon with moves they can't normally have, whatever, but keeping entire species exclusive to events, and continuing to keep them that way in subsequent games over the next 20 years is why I stopped following the main games. All it does is punish the people who don't play the game to the exact schedule the publisher likes by locking them out of content on the game they paid for. The game is deliberately left incomplete to those who don't live their lives to the Pokemon Company's schedule. And that's if you even get those events near you in the first place. For example, I could have bought all 3 Generation 3 games, both Gen 1 remakes, Colosseum, XD and Channel. That's 8 games which, if they were new, would have cost £270 in mid-2000s money. £270, over £400 in today's money, for games meant to be connected to get everything, and I still wouldn't be able to get everything as I still wouldn't have Mew, Celebi or Deoxys. That's fucking unacceptable. And don't forget, there never was a Celebi event in the UK, so even after spending all that money, I have never had a chance in the first place. And never mind what Heart Gold and Soul Silver did by holding actual important backstory behind event exclusive content. And let's not forget another issue they cause. If you get them, and then the events end, you cannot start a new game, or else you've lost your event content forever and can't get it back. Start a new Heart Gold file and no Giovanni Silver story for you. And as I've said before, what if you want to go back and play a game because you missed it when it was new? Maybe you're a younger player new to the series and weren't even born yet, but want to go back and experience older games. Tough shit, your content is locked from you. You weren't born to the Pokemon Company schedule, you don't get your Mythicals in Gen 3. Event exclusive Pokemon are just on-disc DLC that people for some reason just roll over and accept, some even defend, just because it's Pokemon. If anything, they're worse. Let's take a look at an infamous case, Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Yeah, 12 completed characters on the disc held off to be charged extra for later. Pretty bad, most would agree. This is still worse, because at least Street Fighter Cross Tekken's on-disc DLC didn't also require travel to get. In most cases the travel cost would most likely cost more than most DLC, just to unlock content that is fully completed on the cart already. I remember seeing that there was a Deoxys event for Fire Red and Leaf Green, where the nearest event to me was around London. I'm from Yorkshire and was a child. Even I knew not to even bother asking my struggling mother to drive me down to fucking London to have content in my game unlocked that should have been available on purchase. There are two defences in particular that I really hate above all others. First is, you don't need the Mythicals to have the game claim your Pokédex is complete. That's not good enough. I can still see the gaps in my Pokédex where the on-disc DLC should be. When the game says you've completed the Pokédex without it, everyone is aware that there's a massive asterisk next to that statement. The second one is one that baffles me that anyone could make and think it'll convince others. I've seen some say that they like events because they like having this content that no one else has because it feels special. Fuck that! The rest of us should pay for incomplete games because you want to feel special. Imagine saying that with other games' DLC. If say, Sora in Smash Ultimate or Shang Tsung in Mortal Kombat 11 were only available for a limited time in a place you had to travel to, and someone claimed they were happy to have those characters limited as they like having this content no one else has, they'd be raked over the coals, and deservedly so, but with Pokemon you can say that and get away with it. And this is why I just couldn't continue with the mainline games. I was playing White's post-game for the first time and I was having fun, but I never finished it because it was early 2013. And the sinking realisation came that because I had other things going on over the previous 2 years, I can't even access the entire game. Like Zoroark for example. If you remember, this was the very first Generation 5 Pokemon revealed, and in the original Black and White it was event exclusive. And no, a sequel from a couple years later requiring another purchase making it available normally does not excuse it. I never got to the sequel because of this shit, and even if I did, the content in the originals is still locked behind anti-consumer bullshit. So when X and Y were announced as I was playing White, for the first time I felt a complete fatigue with the main series, knowing I'd be going through all that bullshit again and never even tried to get them. When Sun and Moon were announced in 2016, I did at least go back to my Heart Gold for a bit and had fun filling what I missed. But as I got to around 450 of the Gen 4 National Dex, that feeling of futility came back, knowing I couldn't complete it, and I just dropped it. Since then, I've only done 2 Gen 1 playthroughs, one of them this one you're seeing now, and only because the Mew glitch exists, as it's the only way I can play a mainline Pokemon game without feeling scammed. Now, since I dropped the mainline series, I believe some absolute heroes have managed to back up most of the Generation 3 through 5 events and have devised ways to activate them on cartridge without a cheat device. Thanks to these legends and those who discovered glitches in Gen 2 and 3 for getting Mythicals, as of now, this channel will at least be able to make it through to Gen 5. Since I believe events from Gen 6 and on are still unavailable, those games are simply not eligible for me to cover them until they are. Okay, I'm done now. You still here? You doing fine? You are 19,000 words into a Pokemon video that hasn't even covered the second gym leader yet. Well, this has gone long enough that I may as well explain that despite saying up to Gen 5 are eligible for me to cover, behind the scenes reasons make it unlikely I'll even get that far. In fact, there are currently practical issues that make it unlikely for me to get past Generation 1. For Generation 4 and 5 I still cannot record DS games, except for those I can download from the Wii U Virtual Console before that goes down, and no mainline games are on that. For Generation 3 the issue is of money. I do not own Pokemon Emerald or Pokemon XD, and they happen to be the 2 most expensive games of that generation. PAL copies of Pokemon XD are starting to go for around £200, But as I've been aiming towards a full set of GameCube games since I was 12, I'll have to give in and bite the bullet someday. Pokemon Emerald is also very expensive, and there's the issue of the GBA games being some of the most bootlegged games ever, and I don't want to risk spending over £100 on something that turns out to be fake. Gen 4 has that issue as well, a bit. I don't own Soul Silver, which is now ludicrously expensive. Generation 2 is just filled with issues. There's a save battery issue, so I need to sort that out. Can't do the 3DS Virtual Console re-releases as I can't record from a 3DS. Then there's Pokemon Stadium 2. I'd like to be able to use the connectivity between it and the Game Boy Color games, so the upcoming Nintendo Switch Online N64 thing isn't what I want to do. Plus, I don't even have Switch Online, so I'd have to buy a physical N64 copy, and once again, PAL versions are pretty pricey, around XD prices for a fully boxed one. And it'd have to be a fully boxed one. I refuse to spend £80 for just a loose cartridge. If I'm spending more than a certain amount on a game, it better be complete. While I'm at it, I may not even finish all of Gen 1 anytime soon. These 3 are fine, they're already done, I'm making the videos on them. And I also own Japanese Stadium 1, International Stadium 1, Snap and Pinball. But I don't have the card games, Hey You Pikachu or Puzzle League. And Puzzle League is another one where all the PAL copies are all controlled by scalpers. The N64 is pretty much impossible to collect for these days if you're a PAL player. And with all that complaining done, let's continue. For the first time, Yellow is going to cover a section for the first time, but not that much. I just need to skip ahead a bit for the Mew glitch in this version. For some reason, getting the ticket from Bill makes the police officer move away from the door of the robbed family so I can go inside. The house is in a terrible state, and the father says his Dig TM was stolen. I go through the hole the Rocket Grunt made in the back wall and challenge him. He starts with a level 17 Machop that gets my Rattata to level 17. This is followed by a level 17 Drowsy that goes down just as fast. The Grunt gives in and hands over the TM28 Dig. He then flees. Talking to the owner has him decide to move on and teaches Pokemon Dig naturally, so I can keep the TM. The back garden of this house leads south and out of Cerulean City into Route 5. I jump down these ledges for the only bits of grass on this route. Jigglypuff finally appears in yellow here so I can catch one. And after a few failed attempts, Abra also appears here for the first time so I can get one. I start the glitch with the teleport on Route 24, defeat the first swimmer in the gym which gets my Pikachu to level 19, and then back to Route 24 to trigger the Mew battle. This one actually requires a reset as I run out of Pokeballs on the stubborn thing, but I managed to catch it on the second attempt and let it rot in the box forever. Now back to Blue. Now that I've done the glitch, I no longer need this junior trainer on Route 24's grass. He has a level 14 Rattata and level 14 Ekans that gets my Pidgey to level 15. I then defeat the youngster I skipped only in Blue, as he is another trainer that it's possible to do the Mew glitch with. Now for a grinding session before taking on the gym, as I have many Pokemon that evolve through level that I'd like to make equal levels, aiming for level 19. First, Bellsprout reaches level 17, then Spearow level 18. Pidgey reaches level 16, Rattata reaches level 17 and then level 18 and level 19, Wartortle reaches level 19, followed by Bellsprout reaching level 18. I have it forget Growth for Sleep Powder. Next level is Pidgey to level 17, then Sandshrew to level 9 and Spearow to level 19. Bellsprout reaches level 19 next, followed by Pidgey to level 18, evolving it into Pidgeotto. Once again, my view of Pidgeotto may be skewed because of the anime, but I always liked it. Not as much as its evolution, but definitely more than Pidgey. I think he's just one of those perfect middle evolutions that gets the balance between the first stage and final stage just right, making a very good in-between. It also has one of the best looking back sprites in my opinion, especially when you compare it to so many others that looked bad even at the time. Like Charmeleon's back sprite, that thing can't claim to be Charmeleon. Pidgeotto reaches level 19 and so it and Spearow are boxed for Geodude and Paris. A few minutes later, Sandshrew reaches level 10 and learns Sand Attack. My Geodude reaches level 11 next and learns Defense Curl. Level 12 doesn't take long after that. Geodude's level 13 is the next level, followed by level 14, and then Paris reaching level 11, and Geodude reaching level 15. Sandshrew reaches level 11 next, and Geodude reaches level 16 and learns Rock Throw, which makes grinding on Spearows much easier. It quickly reaches level 17, and then Paris reaches level 12. I had to switch train Paris for a bit as everything here just kicks its head in. Sandshrew reaches level 12 next, followed by Geodude reaching level 18, and then level 19. I then box it for Magikarp. Sandshrew reaches level 13, then level 14, level 15, and then Paris reaches level 13. Sandshrew reaches level 16 and then level 17, which teaches it the much better Slash. With this much better move, it quickly gets to level 18 and finally level 19. It gets swapped out for Zubat. Paris reaches level 14 and through a lot of Stun Spore usage, level 15 soon after. Paris may be picking up, but Zubat is one of the most miserable grinding experiences I've ever had, since it starts with just Leech Life, which is a garbage move, to the point that the Metapods are the only Pokemon here it can defeat with certainty. Paras reaches level 16, then level 17, and Zubat finally gets some progress and reaches level 11. Bellsprouts are also fine for Zubat since Leech Life is super effective, but it's still crap. Paras reaches level 18 and Zubat reaches level 12 and level 13. It takes a few minutes to reach level 14, and at this point things pick up, reaching level 15 soon after and learning Bite, followed by quickly reaching level 16. Paras finally reaches level 19 and Zubat reaches level 17. Paras gets swapped out for Mankey and Zubat reaches level 18. A few minutes later it reaches level 19, being boxed for Mew, and Magikarp finally reaches level 16. Mankey reaches level 13 and Mew reaches level 8, then level 9 and level 10, learning Transform. Being a legendary, leveling Mew is quicker since it's stronger than all these wild losers. It reaches level 11, level 12, level 13, level 14, level 15, level 16 and level 17. Mankey finally moves forward a bit by reaching level 14. Magikarp's still here too and gets to level 17. Mew reaches level 18 and level 19, Mankey reaches level 15 and learns Karate Chop, followed by level 16. Magikarp reaches level 18, Mankey reaches level 17 after its disobedience gets it KO'd a lot. It reaches level 18 and Magikarp beats it to level 19, Mankey catches up soon after. I finally take on the rest of Cerulean Gym. I already defeated the first swimmer, but in front of Misty is another forced battle. It's the first female junior trainer in the game and she has just a level 19 Goldeen. My Bellsprout defeats it in 2 hits. Next up is talking to the gym leader, Misty. It was so strange going from the anime to the games as a kid and seeing that Brock and Misty, these 2 hugely important characters who were in hundreds of episodes, were actually just minor NPCs who didn't say much and never moved from their spots. She starts with a level 18 Staryu, but Bellsprout puts it to sleep and easily defeats it, reaching level 20. Then comes the level 21 Starmie, one of my biggest roadblocks as a kid, mainly because I kept trying to take it on with just a Charmeleon and a Metapod. I poison it and get in a damage race, which I lose. I try with Rattata's Hyper Fang to finish it, but Bubble Beam crits and one-shots it, so I just have Wartortle outlive it, also getting it to level 20. Misty grants me the Cascade badge, which makes all Triada Pokemon up to level 30 obey me, and allows me to use Cut outside of battle. She also gives me TM11 Bubble Beam. Now this is a fucking good move, and will last me the rest of the game. But first, let's go back to Red. First up is the grind for Misty, which will not be in as much detail as in Blue. Charmeleon becomes the first to reach level 19. I then take on the junior trainer on Route 24. Notice I'm using Kadabra here, as I intend this to be part of my final Red team. The other 2 games I only plan to evolve them and box them. Kadabra is very good, so it takes no time at all to reach level 19. Next, Pidgey gets to level 18 and evolves into a Pidgeotto, and then reaches level 19 a few minutes later. And not long after, Rattata joins them. The start of the grind is going much smoother in this version. At level 17, Oddish learns Stun Spore. If we're comparing version exclusives found in the same place, Ekans' Wrap makes it much easier to level than Sandshrew just starting with Scratch, but it still gets knocked out often. The next milestone takes a while as there's a lot of fainting and swapping around, but Oddish reaches level 19 next and learns Sleep Powder. Spearow joins the level 19 club soon after. While Magikarp and Ekans continue to struggle, Geodude gets put in the party and rockets from level 8 to level 19, while those other 2 manage just 3 combined levels between them. It gets swapped out with Zubat, and now I'm just swapping between 3 Pokemon constantly getting their asses kicked. Ekans is getting there as it slowly levels, but Zubat and Magikarp just can't take a hit. Ekans starts really getting its act together and learns Bite at level 17. Ekans becomes the next one to reach level 19 and gets boxed for Paras. Even at triple speed it takes another 35 minutes for something new when Magikarp reaches level 19. Zubat then reaches it a minute and a half later. That just leaves Paras, who takes another 20 minutes. With that I can take on the rest of Cerulean Gym. First for Junior Trainer. I was expecting Oddish to do just as well as Bellsprout with it having Absorb. However, it gets confused and Goldeen has Peck, which is super effective against grass types. It looks like Oddish will fall, but after reaching red health, I get really lucky with Goldeen wasting turns with Tail Whip and Confusion wearing off. That just leaves Misty. Staryu goes down easy, as it barely attacks and Misty uses a precious turn on the next defend. Oddish reaches level 20 from this. As for Starmie, it makes things harder for itself by only using Tackle, allowing my Absorbs to heal most of the damage. I win the damage race and get my Cascade badge and TM11. And now for Yellow. I take on Route 24's Junior Trainer and win. After a couple more minutes, Abra reaches level 14 and I use my rare candies to evolve it into Kadabra. Mankey becomes the first to join Pikachu at level 19, and it doesn't take long for Rattata to reach it too. As I'm then juggling Spearow, Pidgey, Geodude, Sandshrew and Zubat at once, it takes a while for the next milestone. It takes about half an hour for Spearow to be the next one to reach level 19. 6 minutes later, Pidgey reaches level 18 and gets me a Pidgeotto, which soon hits level 19. 8 minutes later, Geodude reaches level 19 and is joined by Sandshrew 9 minutes later. During this long period, I check in on Pikachu and he absolutely adores me now. The next level 19 takes a further 30 minutes until Zubat gets it, followed by Oddish a few minutes later. They both get boxed and now the current juggle is between Magikarp, Paras, Bellsprout, Charmander and Venonat. It takes Bellsprout 7 more minutes to reach level 19. Venonat is used for the first time and it's another really tough one as its only attacking move is Tackle. I should add that learning Supersonic at level 11 is another yellow change. There's also this Charmander I received, who shoots up the levels thanks to all the grass types on Route 24. And so, after Bellsprout reached level 19, it took 20 minutes for something to happen when Charmander reached level 16 and evolved into a Charmeleon. 4 minutes later, Paras reaches level 19, and Charmeleon joins it 2 minutes after that. From there, it takes 15 minutes for Venonat to reach level 19 and, exclusively to Yellow again, learn Confusion. And then 10 minutes later, Magikarp finally reaches level 19. That's all but Bulbasaur, who I'm holding back for a reason, and I take on Cerulean Gym. First for Junior Trainer, not messing about with grass, I send Pikachu against the Goldeen and it reaches level 20. I choose to forget Tail Whip to learn Slam. And now for Misty, who, like Brock, has also been redrawn in her anime outfit. I Thunder Wave and Thunder Shock the Staryu to death and do the same with Starmie, taking advantage of Misty's tendency to always start with an X Defend. Defeating it gets Pikachu to level 21. I get my Cascade badge and TM11. And now it's time for some trading. First of all, between red and blue, I trade my Kadabras, evolving them into Alakazams and trade them back as I want the red one for my final team. I really like Alakazam. It's just Kadabra but cooler, and in this game especially, it's incredibly good thanks to the Psychic type's general overpoweredness. Like I'm sure a lot of people, my first exposure to Alakazam was through that one anime episode with the ruins of the gigantic Alakazam and Gengar fighting, so it definitely left an impression. While trading back, my transfer pack loses connection due to being in the Tribute 64 while saving, and I shit myself, worrying I may have damaged my save files. Luckily it's safe, and by the next trading session, my second official controller has arrived so it'll no longer be a problem. Next is trading Wartortle and Charmeleon over and then back to register Charmeleon on the blue Pokédex and Wartortle on the red Pokédex. Then comes trading the spare Bellsprout from blue for the spare Oddish in red, and the last one between these two is the spare Sandshrew from blue for one of red's spare Ekinzas. Now for yellow and red. Kadabra from yellow for the third Ekans from red, so that the Kadabra evolves and I trade the resulting Alakazam back for Bulbasaur to register it in red. I then send it back over, but there's nothing else red needs, so I just send yellow's Beedrill over, it doesn't need it anymore. Finally, yellow and blue. Bulbasaur also goes to blue and back. I was thinking of ending the video here, but since I only covered Route 5 in yellow, I'll cover it in the other two versions first. In blue, I take on the Rocket Grunt in the back garden and get the TM28. I finally remember to use TM11 to teach Wartortle Bubble Beam. Moving down into Route 5's grass, I find a blue exclusive, Meowth. I catch one at level 14. Meowth is one of the hardest Pokemon to separate from their role in the anime. I keep forgetting it's just that one that can talk. I always liked Meowth, just not to the extent that many others do. Maybe it's because I was never as enamoured with the anime as Team Rocket as most other fans are. Plenty of times I found them pretty tiresome and wished they didn't have to be in every episode, and Meowth was included in that. Apparently they did eventually start taking episodes off, but that was well over half a decade after I tuned out. But Meowth's always been iconic for a reason. It has a strong design, but I'd have to disagree with that one group of dedicated fans who wanted to take Jigglypuff's Smashbot. Since the other two games don't have Meowth, I catch a second one at level 12 and a third one at level 14. Further south, separated by ledges from everything else, is the Daycare. Leave him a Pokemon that he will level up, come back later, and pay more for it back based on the amount of levels gained. I never use the Daycare in Generation 1, I'd just rather do the grind myself. And finally, Route 5 in red. I take on the Rocket Grunt and get TM28. In Route 5's grass, Mankey finally makes its red debut and I catch one at level 10. And that's it for Route 5 and for Pokemon Red, Blue and Yellow this episode. Holy shit, I was not expecting it to get this long. And it's only a part 1 of 4. The plan was for 3 parts covering my thoughts on around 50 Pokemon each, but as this got longer and longer, I scaled it back to 4 parts and this episode had me cover a nice even 40 Pokemon. So aside from my rant on events, I've been pretty positive so far, and it has been a positive experience playing this again. I've never really found this game as hard to go back to as people nowadays claim it to be. The grinds got a bit tedious, but I'm only doing them because I have the triple speed to make it bearable, otherwise I would have done things differently. But next episode I'll be moving on to Vermilion City and some of the game's age will start to show, but it'll still be a good time.